Packing is one of the surest indicators of success in football, but chances are you've never heard of it. In this review, I'll discuss that idea and many others in Christoph Biermann's book, Football Hackers, The Art and Science of a Data Revolution. This book looks at some of the outsiders entering football, using clandestine methods to look at tactics, cognitive training, transfer strategy and scouting. One of the first unique metrics we look at is packing, which determines how many opposition players are bypassed, i.e. packed, by one action, be it a dribble, a pass or a dummy. So if Phil Foden eliminates 3 players with a through ball to Erling Haaland, that means he's bypassed or packed 3 opponents. At Euro 2016, teams with better packing won 34 times, drew 14 times and lost just 3 times. The metric was created by the former Bayer Leverkusen teammates Jens Hegler and Stefan Reinartz. They later founded the company Impact, which sells its data to different clubs and organisations. They came up with this packing metric because they learned that there was no real hard and fast metric to determine how well a player had played. So, for instance, newspaper ratings just varied wildly, and managers would maybe state something like the amount of shots or the amount of tackles that a player had made to determine if they'd succeeded and really thrived in the match. With this, the duo could really provide mathematical proof in how well a player had played and how many opponents he'd eliminated. And this was perhaps the first time in history that a pair of Germans were really stoic and analytical. And packing was just so interesting to me because although this book was released in 2019, this was the first time I'd ever come across this term. I also searched for Premier League packing data and couldn't find anything on this. Furthermore, another groundbreaking metric discovered by an outsider, blogger Colin Trainer, was passes per defensive action, which would quantify how good a team's pressing was. This looked at each defensive action in the final 65 yards of the pitch, so a tackle, a block, a foul, minus the amount of opposition passes. So the smaller the number, the better the pressing. Trainer, a humble bank auditor in Northern Ireland, looked at Borussia Dortmund's struggles at the start of the 2014-15 Bundesliga season. By Christmas, the yellow and black team were right down near the bottom of the table, and their then manager Jurgen Klopp, with a bit of brilliant analysis, said, "We look like idiots." Trainer found that when Borussia Dortmund were really struggling and just losing all the time, they had a higher number of passes per defensive action. With that, they'd also just sold Robert Lewandowski to rivals Bayern Munich. Now, Lewandowski is obviously one of the best goal scorers of the last 20 or 30 years, but Trainer found that he had a higher number of defensive actions, so they perhaps missed him even more than his goals for his defensive actions as well. Furthermore, this particular season, the data found that Dortmund's opponents were scoring with 15% of their shots and 6% of their shots from outside the area, both really high metrics. So you could argue that Borussia Dortmund was simply unlucky. Interestingly enough, Matthew Benham, the professional gambler and owner of Brentford, says that luck is such a huge part of football and the table very much lies. Benham was another outsider who invaded football with his fresh ideas. He called results and form noise and really guarded against cognitive biases. When he was a shareholder at Midtjylland in Denmark, he taught then manager Glenn Riddersholm about the areas of the pitch to focus on, which led to the highest probability of a goal. Riddersholm then drilled his players relentlessly in these particular patterns of play, and in 2014-15 this led to Midtjylland's first ever Danish Superliga title. And to this day, Benham's influence reigns supreme at Brentford, who only shoot if they've got a really high chance of scoring. So for instance, in 2024-25, Brentford had the 15th most shots in the Premier League, but the 5th most goals. And it just shows that shooting when there's no chance of scoring is just a waste of time. You cede possession and produce a loose ball. Ooh, look at me getting all Pep Guardiola on your ass. Benham's theories about luck and chance in football do hold weight because we know over the years how much just random chance, such as weather, refereeing decisions, and deflections, can really influence football. Oh yeah, I forgot about beach balls. Many people in the book, including Benham, are actually so sceptical of data and prefer to lean towards analysing probability. When we look at data, Germany's 7-1 victory over Brazil in the 2014 World Cup is a case in point. Think back to your memories of that game. I mean, Germany battered them. They were all over them, weren't they? Surely they were. Well, in fact, Germany had fewer shots, fewer corners, and a less successful pass completion rate. So maybe like Brentford and Midtjylland do, they purely just worked the ball into their most profitable positions and simply took their chances. This created a lopsided scoreline which perhaps didn't reflect the data on show. One thing which clubs need to subtract is the emotion. Quite clearly, Brazil were unlucky and displayed plenty of effort and attacking intent. However, because of the media pressure and the element of playing at home, the result was just blown out of all proportion. So to sum up, I did learn so much from this book, and it just shows you how much the media really simplify football, just focusing on the most prolific strikers and the dodgiest goalkeepers. I think from now on I'll watch football in a more nuanced manner and just focus on the individual parts of the pitch which teams really fixate on. Some of the other interesting ideas in the book included looking at football in a more algorithmic manner and the potential for AI to draw up a transfer strategy and tactics as well. So this got me thinking about whether this kind of progression in football is a good thing. Do we want football to be bland and clinical and results focused, or do we want it to be entertaining, unpredictable and exciting? So due to capitalism and the emergence of marginal gains, I do think these outsiders with their rigid ideas of how to win football, I think they're here to stay. For instance, teams such as Atletico Madrid and Stoke have wildly outperformed their budget by focusing on set pieces. This is a great example of football clubs just controlling the controllables and finding a way to win which doesn't involve having the most money or having the best players. And what I will say about this book is because it was translated from German, some of the ideas were sometimes a little bit convoluted and the copy was quite dry in places too. Packing and passes per defensive action were also a little bit difficult to understand at first, so I had to reread those passages a little bit and also search on Google just to make sure that I understood them correctly. That said, I did learn so much from this book, including how the Bundesliga clubs a lot of the time will hire quite unfashionable at the time managers such as Jurgen Klopp, Julian Nagelsmann and Thomas Tuchel. All three were so inexperienced when they started, but now they've had such successful careers. Although as an ardent fan of Sir Gareth Southgate, I do believe that Tuchel has a really tall order. So with one last nod to the waistcoated wonder, that pretty much wraps up the review. Thank you so much for watching as ever and hope to see you soon.